I used to hate going to work. I still do, but for very different reasons, as you can understand. I now have a background level of anxiety that permeates my day, like a sinister shadow hovering over my shoulder that's never there when I look. I'm always on the edge of a panic attack. I only feel safe when I get home. Once I'd unlocked the door, stepped inside, placed my keys in their box, taken my shoes off and put them safely away under the table that sat next to the front door, then I'd wash my hands 5 times. The satisfaction I'd get from multiple washes soothed me. When I put my key in the door tonight and I saw it was unlocked, dread filled me. Did I forget? If I did, what else had I forgotten to do today? My dad had retired, so to hear my father, upstairs, swear under his breath didn't worry me initially. It was how he did it, frantic panting between a staccato stab of fucks. "Dad?" I shouted up the stairs, feeling my anxiety build to a crescendo. "Elizabeth, is that you?" he asked, and I heard his pacing stop. "Don't come upstairs, okay, honey?" "What's wrong?" "Everything is fine," he said, but his intonation betrayed his fear. His words jumped around in his mouth like a tone-deaf singer trying to hit the high notes. I crept up the stairs, holding the banister for purchase, craning my neck forward, trying to snatch a glimpse of him on the landing. His pacing returned. A creak from under my feet alerted him, his head thrust into view. "Get downstairs," he shouted. My feet obeyed his command before my mind had time to protest. I stole a final glance up the stairs, and his eyes met mine. What I saw in them wasn't fear, per se. It was past that. Fear is typically a response to the unknown. What I saw in his eyes was recognition and acceptance. What I saw was shock. I sat in the living room, my legs held close to my chest, my fingers numb from the vice-like grip I had on them. I listened to his footsteps as they traversed the upstairs. From the difference in sound, I could tell where he was. He drifted between the office, my parents' bedroom, and the bathroom. He didn't relent. His mumbling returned, obviously not under his breath. I could hear it downstairs. "Dad?" I offered impotently. He didn't hear me, and I'm not sure if I wanted him to. Bedroom, office, bathroom, bedroom, office, bathroom. Time seemed to stand still. I stared at the clock that sat on the mantelpiece, and I willed the second hand to complete its circuit, though I wasn't sure if the act of watching or my thumping heart seemed to slow it. In my mind, my mother's face came to me, and I pushed it away. I knew what I was telling myself, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. Something had happened to my mother. Had to be. If it hadn't, Dad would have told me, surely. It was obvious I would have worried, and with that, I thought about her. A cold sweat erupted on my brow, and the anxiety I had been doing so well to keep inside bled into panic. Then there was silence, except for the ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I looked around the room. Hearing my snatched breaths, the panic felt out of place, and I was snapped back to reality. It was as if my body had been possessed, and now was asking me what the big deal was. I waited, expecting the footsteps to return. When they didn't, my grip relented, and my anxious blood raced back into my extremities with fierce purpose, making my fingers tingle. My legs hurt as I placed my feet on the floor, feeling the knots in my muscles stretch. As if on autopilot, wanting to be with my father, I made my way towards the stairs. "Dad?" I asked calmly, still aware of my racing pulse. He didn't respond. I saw no one when I got to the top of the stairs. I headed for the office, the door open, and the light from the lamp that sat on the desk shone out. I stopped as I passed the bathroom. I didn't need to gaze inside to know someone was there. I could sense it. Then I was aware of sobbing. I turned to see my father, his elbows resting on the edge of the bathtub, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up, wet. His thinning hair was a mess, not the neat and orderly row of a side parting. He knew I was there, but his anger had gone. I now know it wasn't anger. He was trying to protect me, but his energy was gone. As he turned his face to mine, I saw the fresh tears that streaked his face. He tried to pull the shower curtain across, but I already saw. I saw the pale flesh of 2 legs that abutted the end of the tub. I saw the red liquid that had smeared her flesh. I didn't want to look at her face, but I already had by the time I wanted to look away. As I closed my eyes and felt my stomach lurch, Dad spoke so softly. "It's not your mother. I didn't kill her. I didn't. He repeated that last line until it faded away and all I could hear was a pale echo of the words. I fell to my knees, my hands spreading out in front of me to cushion my fall. I became aware of the itchy pile of the carpet as it gripped my skin. Then I felt my father's hands on my shoulder. An acceptance grew within me. If he could do that to her, he was going to do it to me. I winced. I was broken. And I waited. I wanted to make it easy for him. I didn't want to struggle and end up suffering. I wanted it to be quick. When that didn't come, and instead his arms drew around my waist and he cried silently in my ear, I fell back into his arms. "It's not her, okay? It's not her," he said to me, trying to soothe. "What did you do?" I asked, not wanting to know the answer. "It's not her, I promise," he replied, his voice turning from pathetic whines into something with commitment. "It isn't her. She's still in the bedroom." "I saw her," I replied between tears. Her face flashed into my mind's eye, seeing hers wide open in shock, her mouth agape, completely unaware her own husband was going to take her life away from her. "Please, check the bedroom," he said, pushing me away. I moved on my knees, feeling woozy and faint. I slammed my back against the wall to see the eyes of the man I knew as my father beg me. I don't know why I got up. I don't know why I checked. My mind was swimming, trying to stay above water. The fight or flight response pausing between the two options, not knowing which one to pick. I found myself in front of my parents' bedroom, and I hovered at the threshold. I could see the duvet carefully placed to give the appearance of a single body sleeping. I expected now was the time I'd feel a blunt object hit my head. I braced for it, the hairs on my neck reacting prematurely. When it didn't come, I walked into the room. I rounded the bed. The closer I got, the more realistic it looked. On the nightstand, an empty cup sat, next to it a box of sleeping tablets. That wasn't unusual, but in the circumstances, I wondered how many of them he'd given her, and even if they were the pills they were supposed to be inside. I pulled back the covers. I almost screamed, but from the doorway, someone preempted me, and I heard a delicate shh. My father waited quietly as I inspected the breathing body of my mother in the bed. Without thinking, I prodded her, wanting to know she was real. "Don't wake her up," my dad scolded quietly. "What's going on?" my mother murmured. I panicked. "Everything's fine. I just got home from work. I wanted to say hey." "Hey yourself," she said through closed eyes, her lips pursed. I leaned over, feeling all the muscles in my body cry out in pain, feeling the tenseness. I kissed her gently. She smiled softly and was purring a delicate snore before I moved. It was as if I glided back to my father. I cannot remember walking. "What's happening?" I asked. He shook his head, and before he could stop me, my eyes wandered into the office. In the office chair in front of the computer, I recognized the shirt. I had been looking at it moments ago. It hung on my dad. Instead of the sleeves that were rolled up to the elbows, it covered the arm that hung gently over the side of the chair. I didn't need to go any further inside to understand. My father grabbed me and pulled me towards him. "That's not me in there, okay? I'm here. I'm your father. Elizabeth, listen to me." I nodded quickly, trying to process what was happening. I could hear something that I couldn't place. I thought it was Mum waking. "Dad, Mum needs you," I said. "Don't worry about her," he replied and hugged me tightly. "You don't want her to wake, do you?" We had to do something, but I didn't know what. But I knew my mother couldn't see what had happened. It would frighten her. "It's not your mother," he said, and I felt my heart sink. I thought back to the body in the bathroom. "That's coming from your room." "Dad?" I heard, almost slurred, and then some thumping. I watched as the door to my bedroom reverberated in time with each thump. "I had to be sure," he said to me. "Oh my God," I whispered. "I had to wait until you came home. I had to see you. Go downstairs." "No," I replied. "Get down the goddamn stairs," he said quietly through his gritted teeth. I sat in the living room, my legs held close to my chest, my fingers numb from the vice-like grip I had on them. I listened to the muffled screams that came from upstairs. I let go of my legs and pressed my palms to my ears. From the couch, I could hear the thuds as he moved them down the stairs. I kept my eyes closed and I heard the hiss of the makeshift body bags being dragged across the living room floor, one by one, and into the kitchen and into the garage. After the third, I opened my eyes to see my dad standing in front of me. He told me he wouldn't be long, and when he was back it would be all over. I was worried he was going to be pulled over, unnecessary travel. How would he explain it? He couldn't. 30 minutes, that felt like a lifetime, and the panic rose again. When I heard the car pull into the drive, a rush of relief washed over me. "I need to get to bed," he said. "Will you be okay?" "I don't know," I replied. "Me neither," he said, and he laughed nervously. "I love you, Elizabeth." "I love you too." He had spent his life in the army. He was steeled. It wasn't something I could relate to. I went straight to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of wine, and that disappeared down my throat before I put the bottle down. I did it again and then sat in silence. I sipped the wine, not able to comprehend what had happened. Anxiety is strange. It makes everything seem dreamlike. After the alcohol began to take effect, I relaxed. I couldn't even tell if it really happened. Maybe my father went out for a drive, then parked up and said goodnight. Though something itched at me, needing to be scratched, it gave me an overwhelming sense of the uncanny. Then I knew. Elizabeth. It was that word. I hadn't heard it since I was a child. My dad always called me Beth.